Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Professional People Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Diederich, and on this episode, I have on Scott Newman from Adaptive HR, who is a cannabis payroll specialist. Scott sheds his insights on the industry and shares how important HR practices and having a good payroll provider are for these cannabis businesses. It's a great episode, and I hope you enjoy Scott teaching us how cannabis businesses grow faster.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Professional People Podcast. Really excited to have on my guest today, Scott Newman from Adaptive Payroll. Scott, how about you tell us a little about yourself, your background, and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. First, Dan, thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it. Sure. A little bit about my background. I'm based here in Boston, in the Boston area. Got my start many years ago in sales. Actually, my dad was a career pharmaceutical salesperson, so kind of had that as some people had an attorney or some people had a person in the medical field, but my dad was a sales guy. So kind of what I had it as seen as a role model growing up. So right out of school, my first role in business was working at ADP, doing outsourced, payroll and into the payroll and HR arena, calling on small companies. So really kind of gave me a good sense of, doing business development, working with local businesses. So kind of over the course of the years, I was in that arena, worked in technology for a number of years. I worked in medical sales, calling on hospitals in New England. But I think after a while, Dan, what I realized, I really like working with entrepreneurs, small business owners. So after a few stops, I kind of came full circle, working with Paychex, the other large payroll HR company, working in the Boston area, working with small businesses, helping them with helping grow with HR and benefits and payroll. And after a little bit, after several years, I really started getting intrigued and hearing about the cannabis industry. It was growing very rapidly. I started personally using CBD. I was like, wow, this industry is really, really expanding. And so on a Saturday, I wanted to learn more in Boston, and I stopped by an expo, and I was so naive. I had really no ideas what to expect. I thought it'd be a bunch of people just looking for rolling papers and colored bongs. I was completely wrong. So wrong. And it was 150 vendors, people of all different types, professionals, people really passionate about the industry. And I was like, wow, if I could somehow use my business background to kind of get into a field that's holistic and helping people, it could be really an intriguing thing. So that's where I actually met the founder of our company, Adaptive HR, and he liked my background. And a couple summers ago in 2019, he brought me on to head up the sales effort, and so that's how I got started.
That's an awesome story. And how do you guys over at Adaptive HR help cannabis businesses grow faster?
Sure. That's a good question. Obviously the key thing, all these companies are growing, but how do you do it? So our business is really what we focus on is just helping them grow and be more profitable. We're an outsourced company, so we help them with HR, with payroll and benefits, but we bring it all together under one roof. And really what we see, Dan, is there's a lot of small business owners and their teams, they're getting pulled in a whole different bunch of directions all at the same time. So what we try to do is just take a lot of these things off their plate. I mean, no owner wants to be up at night at 11:45 Googling how to deal with an employee issue, or, hey, I didn't do something right on the payroll side, or I don't know where to go with benefits. So those are all things that take up a lot of time. So what we want to do is give them resources, give them technology, give them support, so they really can focus on what they do best and focus on growing their company, being more lean, attracting good people. And in that way, by having tools and processes in place, they can grow their business more quickly.
That's a great model, and it's all about helping the business grow faster. And it's kind of a good pun that I found in your LinkedIn bio that I liked. But I just wanted to carry on top of that. And from a payroll perspective, how important is it to have the right technology to take the ease of use of doing that, instead of having to have an owner focused on doing that kind of stuff? They can focus on the important things in their business. How important is the right technology today?
I think that's a good question. I think it's critical. I mean, you think about it, as people oftentimes don't realize, the cannabis industry still a lot of is a very cash focused industry. And there's people, if you can believe it, in 2021, Dan, in some places around the country that are still handing their employees envelopes of cash on a Friday. I mean, that's crazy. It's just, in Venmo, PayPal, like, how does that still happen? It's unbelievable to me and unbelievable to them as well. And it's just because so many of these organizations, these challenges in banking, is that they haven't nationally, because it's federally illegal, it hasn't been broadly adapted by organizations to do it across the country. So as a result, people are scrambling and don't often know either how to do it or where to go. So being able to have a platform and have a vendor that can do it accurately, and most importantly, employees need to get paid, especially when you're paycheck to paycheck. They don't want to be uncertain. So you got to find a vendor. It's important to find a vendor that A, is transparent, that they're completely, all into the industry, that they do it accurately. And obviously there's huge fines and penalties if it's not done correctly. So you have to have confidence in that vendor, in that partner that you're going to do business with, that it's done, because otherwise your business could really be at jeopardy. How many people have heard about a company that's been fined or whacked thousands of dollars because guess what? The vendor that they were working with didn't pay their payroll taxes. So it is really important to find a good partner.
That's a good point. And I really wanted to ask you a question that I was curious in, is how challenging was it for you stepping into the cannabis industry and learning all the rules and regulations? And I know you work across the country in different states. So how challenging is that with it being federally illegal, and all these states having different laws? Are they similar or are they very different in all these different states?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, I'd probably say, you have a couple different questions there, so I'll try to.
Yes, sorry, long-tailed question.
No, that's okay. I'll try my best to answer them. So I would say for me, I mean, I've been in the industry for a few years. Personally, I'm still learning a ton. I mean, fortunately, our company is now part of a much larger national company. So we have, a big back office of people and resources that I turn to, and I'm still doing a lot of learning and reading and asking as much as I can about it. But again, it's always finding, making sure that you have a company or people that you can work with that can get those resources. From a national level, yeah, it is different. It is different state by state. Some states have certain nuances in them and certain requirements. So keeping up to them is really important, and just being able to understand what those rules and regs are. For instance, say like in Massachusetts, there's something that's required. Every employee has to do what's called RVT, responsible vendor training. So every employee has to get 8 hours certified in a year, and then they have to renew it each year. That's going to be different. And that's because of the CCC, the Massachusetts regulatory body. And each state has their own set of those. So yeah, I mean, it is a lot of information to keep track of, but obviously not every, most businesses that are starting or just getting out aren't multi-state operators day one. So as long as you focus on just the state that you're in and understand those rules and regs and have resources, whether it's attorneys or CPAs, insurance people like yourself, HR people, if you surround yourself with the key, really good support system, it's a lot easier to navigate those nuances than trying to do it on your own. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. You did a great job. And just building on the end of your answer there, how important is it to have a relationship like you and I have, where I can turn to you to give a client a payroll advice and hiring practice advice, and then you can turn to me to take care of their property and casualty needs and what else?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's under the umbrella of what we call like having really good trusted advisors. I mean, I think beyond anything, if someone who's just starting a business or thinking about getting into the cannabis industry, find a really good attorney or attorneys, find really good insurance people. And obviously, the ins and outs of crop insurance or directors and officers, in our business, having someone, a trusted advisor who can advise on HR rules and regs. Hey, here's benefits that can help you grow. Here's the payroll rules and regs. whatever that is, technology, you should have a trusted advisor to know all the different technology if you're a retail store. So I think what the challenge is that is just trying to identify some of those key people. So if you network, like we do or other people do, get involved with networking groups, it allows you to kind of learn who those people and players are in the industry, and then you can be able to make those recommendations with those vetted professionals that can really be crucial in building a company and in them being successful.
Couldn't agree more. What have you seen as biggest challenges that cannabis businesses have from your experience?
Well, I was sure if you ask you could ask 100 different cannabis owners, and they could pull you out a list that's probably 100 pages long of what the challenges are. So, we could take 8 different podcasts. But I would say, as it relates to the industry or to our field, kind of the human resources side, it's a good question. I would probably say attracting and retaining employees. I mean, employees really, if you think about it, they're the lifeblood of a business. So finding those people, training those people, and then keeping those employees motivated, happy, and productive, I think that is probably one of the biggest challenges that cannabis owners have. I mean, if you take a look at it historically, Dan, I mean, there's a high turnover rate in cannabis. And so people say, well, why is that? It's just a lot of times is you have a lot of new people coming into the field, a lot of people running businesses who haven't run businesses before. There's not often the same types of training that have come with other industries. There's not a lot of benefits as much as other industries. And I think some owners, unfortunately are just in it for profit, hopefully not. And then they're like, okay, well, if I lose someone, I'm going to get someone just turned back. I'm going to be able to just fill that new person's role immediately. And that, I think, is a little short-sighted, because that, one, it costs money to the bottom line, and 2, for morale and culture, I don't think that's the best way to build the company successfully. So I think attracting and retaining, especially as the back half of the year, where it's becoming more and more competitive with, look at all the companies that are growing in Michigan alone. It's mind-boggling from 2 years ago. So I think that is probably the biggest challenge that I see.
Has COVID added on top of that challenge, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, COVID has, there's a number of things there. I mean, there's just the processes, for interviews. Now people are can apply. People are doing things. So much is being done online. Interviews are being done online. The other thing is nationally, cannabis is deemed an essential industry. So that's, so with all the, stress and anxiety, more people are turning to cannabis, and that's created a higher demand. So I think with COVID now, people are realizing, geez, this cannabis industry is not going anywhere. It's only, so people are really realizing it, who may not have realized it 6 months ago. So now that's put more pressure on the owners. Now they have to filter through 400 applications for one bud tender. That's a huge time burden for an owner to think about. So I think it's critical for owners to be strategic about how they want to do their hiring. And now with COVID and people coming out of COVID, the demand is only going to be higher. So they have to figure out and plan strategically how they want to handle that process as they grow.
That's a good point. And when you guys come in and help people with their hiring practices, especially in the cannabis industry, what kind of things are you guys trying to talk with the business owner to? These are things that are going to lead to more longevity with your employees and having them stick around longer.
Yeah, that's a good, and that's a question that I think that we get asked that, or is often asked in industry, Dan. I would say a couple things. One is just from even just setting the table with the expectations. A lot of owners that we talk to aren't sure about, well, geez, well, how do I, even just having the right job description, what is the ideal candidate? What do you want? And then set the expectation for them as an employee. Hey, this is what my role is going to be. Are you going to be a bud tender? Are you going to be a trimmer? Are you going to be Are you going to be a GM? Are there do you have to be able to lift 50 pounds? Then there's also just things discriminatory. You can't, you need to be able to set all of those things critically up front in the job description. So that is important in the hiring process, is having really sound job descriptions. The second piece I would say is having a good system or process for onboarding. I mean, you think about it, most of these folks in the cannabis industry, aren't just hiring one person. They may be hiring 5, 10, 30, sometimes even 50 employees over the back half of the year. So just having a good process. How do you filter all those applicants into a way that's effective for the the person who's applying to that job? I mean, who wants to apply for a job and never hear from anything? They're going to lose faith in that company. You want to have a good system in place. So I think that is, and also a good system for the managers to be able to filter effectively so they can judge who's going to be the best candidate. So I think that is a big piece. And then once they make that choice to say, hey, Dan, you know what? I want to have you on my team. What's that experience look like for onboarding? Is it just like filling out tons of paperwork haphazardly, or are they getting effectively onboarded with, W-4, I-9, the critical information? Are they signing off on the right policies and procedures through an employee handbook? That's a really big piece, having the right policies in place, and then have that process be easy. So when that employee shows up on their day one, when they're super excited, all they have to do is show their ID, and now away they go, and they're trained. And then lastly is just also part of the process is setting the expectations. Hey, now that you're on board, hey, this is what training is going to look like. These are what we expect, and this is how we're going to monitor your performance. Because I think of it, the analogy, I think someone said this to me, like it's like a race. If somebody says, hey, Dan, I need you to run. Like, okay, well, versus a coach saying, hey, Dan, I need you to run 2 laps for the 800. I need you to jump over these 6 hurdles, and I'm going to time you to see if you do it in 3 minutes. And then we're going to see at the end how you do it. That employee is the same way. Like if you set out exactly the right expectations and how you track them, they're going to be more motivated, and also their performance is going to be better. So kind of a long-winded answer, but I think there's a lot of critical pieces that are important in the hiring process to make the experience good for both the candidate as well as the owners and their teams. I hope that answered your question.
It really does. And I couldn't agree more with you. And just to build on that from an insurance risk management perspective is the more work you put in up front to train your employees and make sure that they're on board and doing the right thing, the less risk you have for things like employee theft and things like that. And in the insurance industry, which is one of the larger claims scenarios that we see with cannabis risk. So really having good training and getting good people into these startup businesses and things that they're dealing with a lot of cash on hand and a lot of crops. So it's really important to get good people in there that you trust. And I think those practices that you talk about help maintain that for a business owner.
I wanted to add one other thing, if I could. I think one other thing, because so many of these companies, again, they're not, most of these companies that are building, again, they're not Fortune 500 companies. You're small to mid-sized growing companies. And I think what's really important that I think businesses can do or have the opportunity to do is, how do they want their culture? What are they, are they driven by social justice? Are they driven for a plant medicine? What is the company's mission? Who's the type of people they want to attract, and why do you want your team to work there? And so I think if you can put that out front, if a business and their team can put that out front, hey, this is what we stand for. These are the types of people that we want to build as part of our team. Here's how we're going to take care of you with a great system and great training and really good benefits to take care of you and your employees. I think if you put some of those things in place, it's only going to create a great environment for the owners and their management. And then that filters down to the people on the front lines. Because if you have those things, your levels of success are probably much likely to be higher. If you don't have those things, that's what leads to the turnover and the frustration and, hey, why these people keep leaving me. So I just did want to mention that because I think that's a really big, a big thing in the cannabis space.
Yeah, and I think all this stuff also goes across industries too. Most of it overlaps, and all these things are really important to a good business model, regardless, cannabis or not, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's good advice for people, but I am interested on where you think the cannabis industry is going. What is your outlook on where it is today and where you think it might be in, say, 5 years?
It's all downhill. It hit its peak. So I think I'm not really sure why you're doing these podcasts, quite frankly. It's a waste of your time. No. I mean, I just looked up a stat. I think it was that the impact of the cannabis economy on the economy as a whole, Dan, this year was like $92 billion. I mean, it's pretty mind-boggling when you think about it. I mean, I think there's so much running room. I mean, just look at 2 days ago, I'm in New England, Connecticut, their governor just passed, they're going to be the newest state to, looks like in 2022. New York and New Jersey obviously just came on, this past election, a number of states around the country are adding. It's only growing, literally growing in terms of states that are coming on. And also in terms of just general acceptance. I think a tipping point has been hit where people are saying, okay, you know what, it's not going anywhere. It's becoming more medicinally accepted. So I just think that there's a huge opportunity at this point for people, if they're thinking about it, to get into the industry. And the big thing, it's driving jobs, it's driving growth, it's driving money back into the economy. Especially post-pandemic. So I think there's a tremendous upside. I'm super excited about where the next 6 months, let alone the next 5 years are going.
Yeah, me too. I think there's amazing growth potential. And you mentioned something there that I wanted to ask you more about is, what is your advice to people who might be interested in working in the cannabis industry, but don't know where to start?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, actually I get asked that fairly regularly. So I would just say this is that, I mean, kind of looking at it, first just start looking inside in yourself. What are the things that you like to do? What are your own skills? I mean, I think sometimes the misconception is people think about the cannabis industry, they just only thinking of, because there's two sides to it. There's the plant touching, and then there's what we call the non-plant touching or ancillary. You and I both work in the cannabis space, but neither of us are bud tenders, right? And so I think a lot of people sometimes don't think as much that there's so many other roles that can be in the cannabis arena that can assist in the space, but you don't necessarily have to work for a dispensary or a cultivator or a manufacturer. So at first is kind of do a little self-assessment. Hey, what do I like to do? Do I like working with numbers? Do I like being outside? Hey, there's opportunity for agriculture. What's your skill sets? Because I think a lot of the skill sets can absolutely 100% be transferred from what you're doing right now to somewhere along the cannabis ecosystem. So kind of just understanding, hey, what do I like? And then what am I good at? And then what I would say is, once you've kind of identified some of those things, just try to reach out to some people and just learn. Try to, whether it's through LinkedIn or, hey, you read a webinar. What I found and I still find is that people in this space are very friendly, open to talk, very collaborative. So if you read in, like, just say like, in Michigan, how many U of M or MSU alums are there? There's probably tons, right? So if you know there's someone through LinkedIn in that space, and even if you don't know it, reach out and say, hey, you know what? I saw your profile, looks like you're in the space. I'm new, I'm considering it. Would you have a few minutes? I'd love to ask you a few questions and learn a little about it. 8 out of 10 times, Dan, I'm going to say that person's probably going to take that connection. And that 10-minute conversation will most likely, people are someone did that to me, I'd probably be on the phone with them for 45 minutes, and be happy.
I'm pretty sure that's how we started talking.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. People are yappy, they love talking about the industry. Hey, I'd love to hear your opinion about it. Oh, geez, everybody wants to hear their opinion. So I think if you reach out to people, use your alumni networks, use anybody just to ask them. From that, you'll learn, I mean, maybe you learn something. Geez, well, I talked to 6 different people and they all said, don't do this. Okay, I'm going to now look over here. Or they say, geez, you know what? Working in a dispensary is awesome. I love helping people coming in. It's really rewarding. Or, hey, I love being a cannabis accountant. Or, hey, you know what? I love construction and now I get to construct huge cultivations. So I think the thing is by doing a little homework and talking to some people, I think can be very helpful.
And again, I think that's advice that goes for any industry as well as just cannabis. But I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on, Scott, and sharing all of your expertise.
Yeah,
I wanted to give you a chance if there's anything else you wanted to add. If not, we like to end. You just gave a great advice, but we always like to end with the question, what is one tip you have for professional people?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that this is going to be cannabis specific, but I find in the cannabis world, it definitely is. Networking is enormous. This is an industry where I think, we'll find people find pretty quickly that it's a small industry, meaning that a lot of people know a lot of people. So I think if you can, even if you don't know a soul, I mean, I literally walked into an expo on a Saturday, didn't know a soul a couple of years ago. And now I am finding that I have a network and ecosystem of people around the country. And that just came from just starting to ask questions and be curious. So I think the thing is, if you're willing to network, sometimes get a little bit out of your comfort zone, ask, go through LinkedIn, maybe you're not an extrovert. That's okay. Just, go through a network like LinkedIn or like Facebook, or find some groups, or find someone that you're comfortable talking with who could refer you. But I think networking is crucial in this space because, for these companies, if you want to get into the space as a professional and you see a job post, guess who else sees that job post? 400 other people. How are you going to differentiate yourself from those 400 other people if you're just sending in an application? But I think if you are able to make a connection through someone who works at that company and who might be able to introduce you to the hiring manager or to someone in there, I think that gives you a much stronger chance to, again, you're not going to necessarily just get the job through someone that are going to hand it to you, but I think the likelihood is a lot higher. So I think that's a thing that I've heard from a lot of my colleagues, that they got into the space because of a connection, because of networking. So that's my tip.
That's a great tip. And thanks again so much for sharing all your insights, and keep helping those cannabises grow faster. Thanks, Scott.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you having me here.
Thanks for listening. And remember, keep it professional, people.
Good.